Duke and Darian Mensah have settled outside of the courtroom, which means we will not get a college sports defining ruling out of this.
You are Locked On ACC, your daily podcast on the Atlantic Coast Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Shout out to the everydayers, and thank you so much for making Locked On ACC your first listen. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the #1 Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. He is Kenton Gibbs, former NC State defensive lineman and co-host of Locked On Wolfpack. I am Alex Donno from Locked On Canes, and on this loaded episode, why so many weeknight games for ACC teams? Is this a smart strategy by the conference, or is it just a little bit Bush League? We'll talk about this Darian Mensah settlement from all angles and who this outcome is better for. Are there winners and losers here? Did both sides win? Did both sides lose? And what happens next? All right, so Kenton Gibbs, the news came out on Tuesday morning, this morning, that they have reached a settlement. Duke is dropping the lawsuit. They're dropping the temporary restraining order. We don't have the financial figures because the settlement is closed. I would imagine there was a big monetary settlement paid by the Mensah side to get out of that NIL deal. But when I say, KG, that we do not get a college sports defining ruling, it's because had Duke won in court, right? And if, Mensah was like not allowed to leave Duke and transfer somewhere else, you're opening the door potentially for quote-unquote student athletes to be defined as employees, which is something the NCAA has fought against tooth and nail. Because if you define your players as employees, there's a lot of benefits and back pay that would come with that, so they don't want that distinction. Or if Darian Mensah had full victory in the courts, Kenton, you could basically tear up those multi-year NIL agreements and you would never have a chance to enforce those in the future, but we didn't get either of those outcomes.
Well, here's the thing. I think that the first outcome, the one in which Duke wins and Darian, his NIL rights stay with Duke, I don't think that makes players de facto employees because of the idea of I am quite literally purchasing your rights to your marketing. That's what was purchased. So if the idea is, hey, you want to go elsewhere, go, please. But you cannot take your rights with you. You go wherever you want, but just know when you go there, your new team can pay us because we have your marketing rights. So if they want to pay you for your marketing rights, well, you don't have them anymore. It's a lot like selling off your catalog, right? If you and I owned everything we did on Locked On ACC and we were like, hey, we're going to sell this off to Maven or Disney because they own ESPN or whoever, and then we were like, well, actually, we want to sell it off to Adidas. We can't. We could not do that. No. You've already sold off the rights. It just is what it is there. So I don't think that will quite get into the employee territory. Now, I do believe that the employee measures are coming down the pipeline because of former ACC legend Deion Sanders and what he's doing at Colorado, right? Like
finding players.
And here's the interesting thing, Donno. He's not finding them for missing NIL events. He's finding them for being late to practice, for being late to treatment, for being late to film study, or missing out on those things altogether. Now that's a different story because you're defining football activities as you will get fined for showing up or not showing up for this. Meaning, Donald, if you can get fined for not showing up to something, sounds like a job to me. It sounds like a job
for sure. Yeah.
I volunteer at my church. I have had times where something has come up where I could not be there for South Central Church of Christ in Raleigh. Shout out to Pastor Dublin, them. I love you. But that's different because they couldn't say, Ken, we're going to fine you for not showing up. I'm not an employee. You can't. What are you doing? But if you are finding, now that on the other hand is a lot more of a employee situation. And then, like you said, now the other side I do agree with. If Darian had took them to court and whooped the wheels off him, all the multi-year deals out the window. Every multi-year deal out the window. And I'm telling you, I have on good authority. I cannot name the names on there, but I have on good authority there are multiple players who wanted to transfer from certain schools this last portal cycle They could not because of
DeMond Williams. That's one.
Exactly. And I'm he's not the only one. He's not the
Yeah.
only one. He was the only one to get in and then have the lawyers paint it out for him. Hey, brother, you've got nowhere to go. But there were others who wanted to go. They talked to their lawyers beforehand and realized they couldn't go. So it is a very interesting thing that this settled out as quickly as it did. But again, this brings me back to the only way to solve these problems for both the universities and the players: sit down at a table and collectively bargain. Sit down at a table and establish firm guidelines for, hey, this is what we can or cannot do. And if you do not want to play in the NCAA, that is fine. Yeah. But if you are coming to work here, a lot like any other union, you're part of the union. You're part of it. That's just is what it is, brother.
Well, because like the NCAA is a big problem here, and it's one of the reasons why I think eventually the schools are going to move out of NCAA governorship and will govern themselves at some point, because you think about the contradiction, right? So the NCAA, by their rules, you've got free agency every year. It used to be twice a year in the transfer portal. But like by the NCAA's rules, because they've gotten their butts kicked in court so many times, they don't restrict players from transferring every year. Now, schools like Duke, Washington, and others have tried to supersede the NCAA rules by making their NIL deals so restrictive that you get locked in for multiple years. So, like, again, we're not 100% sure if that actually works because they settled outside the courts with Mensah, but they are basically attempting to supersede the NCAA's rules by having separate contracts that lock you up, is the way that I see it. So, again, like, you know, at some point you wonder if, especially the Power 4 institutions, kind of look at themselves and say, what do we really need the NCAA for? And the NCAA, if anything, needs more oversight, right? You know, and it pains me to say this because I'm not the type of guy who thinks the government needs to put their hands all over sports. Like, I'm not that guy, but I've heard from enough lawyers and enough NIL lawyers, sports and entertainment lawyers, who are like, yeah, I mean, for the NCAA to operate effectively, they need more congressional or government oversight to kind of set these boundaries for them.
Yeah, and the thing is, we're going to talk about winners and losers in terms of the two sides of this. But I must say, the NCAA came out of this as both a winner and a loser. And let me explain why I say that. They came out a winner in terms of people are going to look at the dichotomy of, did Duke be a loser? Is Duke a loser in this? Is Mensah and Miami a loser in this? You know, those are, and even if you separate those two indices and say, is Miami a winner in this? Is Mensah a winner in this? Even if you separate them in that way, you're still going to be looking at a situation where people are not saying the buck starts with the NCAA. Had the NCAA done their job to begin with, this doesn't happen. The NCAA stands for what, Donno?
National Collegiate Athletic Association.
So if this is, in fact, a athletics situation that is happening within the nation, it seems to me, if these are NCAA members, the NCAA needed to have a major hand in this. Have you heard of any NCAA statements, any NCAA lawyers, any NCAA involvement in this whatsoever?
Yeah, no, I think they stayed far away from it, from what I can tell.
Well, what about DeMond up in Washington? Did you hear about any NCAA involvement in that?
Zilch.
Well, what about Coach Prime over in Colorado? Have you heard any NCAA involvement with the fines?
Nope.
So it gets to a point where you're asking yourself, and hell, let's get outside of the money for a bit, even what we're looking at with what's going on with Clemson and Ole Miss and tampering. Has the NCAA even said anything about that?
You know, I don't think they have. I did see it reported that they're going to look into it, but I didn't see them say it. I saw somebody else say it, that the NCAA might look into that.
And that's all you need to know. Because back in the day, the NCAA, if they found out you had a bagel with some cream cheese on the next day, a statement was released. What? Alex Donno.
The NCAA, they've been sued into oblivion. Like they don't even want to say anything because every time they open their mouth, they get sued and they lose.
And that's the thing. Either you dissolve it or you say, you know what, our hands are off football. Our hands are off football and basketball.
Yeah.
They're too powerful for us to deal with. We are exclusively focusing on the Olympic sports, as these two sports have become ungovernable. These two sports have grown to a point where we can't do nothing with them. And every time we try, the lawyers are going to get involved and we're going to lose. So we are completely washing our hands of this. Don't be halfway in. Don't half step with this one. My mom always told me, as a man, you either decide to be all the way in or all the way out, but you can't go 1 foot in, 1 foot out. You pick a side or you'll die in the middle. And the NCAA right now is dying in the middle because they're deciding, well, we still do govern college football and college basketball, but we don't have the teeth to do anything. So when moments come up that we should be governing, we're going to sit here quietly. Yeah. Unless Dabo Swinney is the biggest liar the universe has ever seen, there is very direct receipts of a young man basically extorting them. But let's be honest.
He had all the text messages and the times they were sent. Like Dabo had his receipts.
And we didn't hear anything from the NCAA. Even in this moment, Mensah is in court. Duke is in court. DeMond is in court. Washington's in court. Everybody's in court. And the NCAA is just sitting on the sideline. This looks interesting. Let's watch how it plays out, gentlemen.
Yeah.
So the NCAA comes out a winner by the fact that people are not bringing them to the front, but they're a loser in terms of moments like this keep inching us closer and closer to football and basketball becoming entirely separate entities, because the NCAA is doing nothing but taking a cut out the pie. And right now, everybody is looking at their pie saying, how can we cut expenses? How can we cut expenses? How can we cut expenses? If cutting the NCAA out cuts your expenses, I guarantee you folks will start doing it.
That's well said, and I'm glad you brought up the NCAA part of it, because to your point, I had overlooked that completely, because when we come back, I want to talk between Duke, Mensah, and Miami, where he's likely to end up. Winners and losers in this situation. You want to keep it locked right here. We're only getting started on this brand new episode of Locked On ACC. Folks, this is Mazda's moving the game forward. For those who show there's more to the score than what's on the screen. You know who moved the game forward this week? Senior guard from SMU, BJ Edwards. He won ACC Men's Basketball Player of the Week, scoring 21.5 points on average in a couple of big wins this week. And this is not the first time Edwards has won Player of the Week. Multiple-time winner now. So BJ Edwards, his hard work, my friends, it shows us that what it really takes to raise the bar is more than just the box score. It's the extra work off the court. It's dialing in every detail. It's giving it that extra fire, that grit, and the I never quit. We put the same passion into every model. Highlights make the reel. What it took to get there makes it count. There's more to a Mazda because there's more to you. Thank you for making Locked On ACC your first listen. And folks, make sure you are checking out the Everydayer Club. If you're an Everydayer, you might as well make it official by joining the Everydayer Club. Go to lockedonpodcast.com/Everydayer. You get exclusive ad-free versions of our episodes, exclusive Discord server access, discounts at the Locked On merch store, and so much more. Find your favorite shows, including Locked On ACC, Locked On Wolfpack, and Locked On Canes at lockedonpodcast.com/Everydayer. Become an official Everydayer today. All right, so first, Kenton, in terms of Duke, I guess most people would paint them probably as the biggest loser in this situation, right? I mean, not only did they lose their quarterback, which is tough, and it put them in a really tough spot where they're trying to get a waiver for Walker Eggett from San Jose State to be their next starting quarterback next year. You know, it's hard. Like, I don't know how badly they lost here, Kenton, because we don't know what the actual settlement terms are. Like, I would assume Duke gets a lot of money for this, but I don't know. Is that $1 million? Is that $4 million? Is it $10 million? We don't know exactly what Duke is getting in terms of damages, but, you know, losing your star quarterback and not having a great replacement, I feel like Duke is the biggest loser here.
I agree with you. And whenever you look at settlements like this, you have to look at the utility of what is gained. If I look at that from the standpoint of from both sides here, and I want to start with Duke because that's where we're starting here. If we look at Duke and the utility of what's gained, let's be super generous, Donno. let's be super generous and say they gained $10 million. They gained the $4 million plus the old $4 million for breaking it plus $2 million in damages. Miami covers it all and is like, hey, Darian, we'll pay you on top of that, whatever the case may be. Great, cool, whatever.
Yeah.
Here's the problem. What utility does Duke have with that money this upcoming season?
Oh, yeah, no, there's hardly anybody left in the portal. You can't do much with that money at this moment, no.
So the thought is, at best, you'll be doing something with it next year, but we all know how mercurial the college football landscape is. And we're talking about it in terms of player movement, but player movement is a new part of the NCAA carousel that's normal. You know what's always been a part of the NCAA? The coaching carousel. So let's say that Manny Diaz has a terrible year next year and decides, you know what, I'm done with this. I'm going to go do something else. Or let's say he has a great year next year and somebody says, wait, you took Duke to an ACC championship, won it, and had a 11-win year with Egan at Duke. I think we need you. I think we need you, right? Yeah. How about it? So he leaves. You bring in somebody new. Sure, you got all the money in the world, but if players think this school is unserious about football, I've seen what Wallace Wade Stadium looks like on a Saturday night in a primetime game. I don't want anything to do with that. What does that money actually do for you? You could say, well, they'll give it to basketball, and basketball will make more great things happen with recruiting and all that. Basketball seems to be doing fine as is with the money that they have. So
they're doing all right.
So what utility does this money actually serve, as opposed to having Darian there, as opposed to having a situation where they are now, looking at their players saying, this is strictly enforced. You play with us, everything is strictly enforced. And even if you were to say, well, the payout was so high, that'll make sure players don't do it again. If it was paid off for this one player, the next player thinks it's paid off for them. So I think Duke is the definitive loser here.
Well, let me ask you a question as a former college ball player at NC State. Now, I know you were there before the NIL era, which is unfortunate timing for you. But okay, so, and I've covered this story extensively from the Miami side, which means I also see what Duke fans and college football fans are saying. And among fans, like Duke suing Mensah was very popular. Like, hey, don't let him do this to you. You've got to get your damages or keep him there. He can't get away with this after signing the contract. But I want to ask you as a player, and this is an honest question. The answer might be no, right? But from a player perspective, right, the idea that, hey, most schools I can, if I want to, I can change teams and I have the freedom to go somewhere else. But maybe Duke will sue me and try to hold me to that. Like, do you think that might give players any concern? Hey, maybe I should have a lawyer look over this deal that Duke wants me to sign because I don't want to get sued in a year if I want to play somewhere else.
I would say absolutely not, and for this reason.
Okay.
When I played, it was all about, we weren't getting paid. So it was all about, hey, I want to win football games. I want to do something special. I want to build something special here. And even if I was looking at it from a standpoint of, would I want to go to this school if I'm not sure if I can transfer next year or wherever elsewhere? We've seen that with multiple schools, just from different aspects. The school right down the street from them, UNC, and this is not a joke. This is not a knock at UNC. This is a factual thing that has happened. Multiple players from UNC have been unable to transfer into the next school that they were going to based on some academic rigor and standings things. So would you say, oh, no player should go to UNC anymore? And again, y'all know how I feel about the Dirty Foot Club. Y'all know, but this is not me taking a dig at them. This is me saying that there are plenty of other examples of, different reasonings why players wouldn't be able to leave. And to me, honoring a contract of $4 million, if I'm looking at my life as a college football player and I'm saying, well, shucky darns, either I honor a $4 million contract or I've got to go to court. I'm not joking when I say this, Donno. I come from the west side of Detroit, 48228 zip code in particular, and the average salary of people around there is about $35,000 a year. If you tell me that all I got to do is honor my contract to make $4 million, sign me up yesterday. I'll be there. I'll be the first one in, last one out. I will sleep in the stadium. I will sleep in Wallace Wade every day. Just give me a little tent and a cover. So I don't think that this will be a discouraging factor, even though most kids, objectively, they may have a different perspective than me because they've grown up. Like NIL is what they know, right? So they may have a different perspective from that aspect. But for me, if I'm looking at a 7-figure deal being what locks me in at college football, I'm geeked up. I think that's a great deal for me. I think that's pretty good.
That's a fair way to put it. All right. So in terms of when we're talking winners and losers here, we look at Miami and Darian Mensah, right? Like on the surface, I think you could say they got everything they wanted, right? I mean, Darian Mensah ultimately, he gets to transfer to Miami and he doesn't have to, leave his NIL rights with him at Duke, right? So he's Miami's going to make him whole again, presumably so. And this is probably expensive for Miami, but Miami got their quarterback. Like they wanted an elite quarterback and they get it. Now, here's where, I'm not sure why you're smirking. I'll find out in a second here. But I will say that potential loser spots for Miami and Mensah is, just reputation, like how this looks from the outside looking in. Like I see Mensah comes off looking like greedy and that he's not honoring his deal. You question his integrity. Miami, looks like on the surface like they're tampering. So, maybe from the PR standpoint, both sides can be losers, but when it comes to actually getting what they wanted, they win.
Miami is the ultimate winner here because Miami knows something that the rest of the country hasn't gotten on to yet. No such thing as bad publicity. Oh God, Miami. People are going to look at Miami as the bad guys now. Do y'all not remember what happened when they played Notre Dame? Oh, I don't know, about 40 some odd years ago.
Yeah.
Their team was dubbed the Convicts. Even now, we see Miami getting undue penalties that they probably don't deserve, that statistically are a little anomalous, and that I watch a game and I say, I'm not sure I agree with that call. But Miami's never had a problem being the bad guy. Nope. So if they've got to get a bad guy, the same thing that I talked about before in terms of the utility of what you gain. What is Miami's utility for Darian Mensah? A healthy Darian Mensah, you get a ton of utility. You get a lot of use out of a elite quarterback pairing with Fletcher and Brown and Lyle and all the offensive linemen that they got, that those boys need to work at Art Van the way they move around furniture. You understand? So the reality is, when I look at Miami, they came out on top just for furthering the reputation as, we're Miami. We get what we want when we want. Say something about it. We dare you.
And by the way, Miami is not a defendant in that lawsuit. Like
exactly.
So unless Duke decides to down the road sue Miami separately, they were not involved in this lawsuit. And I talked to a sports and entertainment lawyer today on Locked On Canes, and he was like, he thought there's a pretty good chance that Miami and Duke probably agreed as part of the settlement that Duke isn't going to sue Miami. So I guess we'll find out if that's part of the settlement or not. But I agree with your take on that. That Miami doesn't mind being the bad guy. But what about Mensah? Does Mensah mind being a bad guy?
Now, remember how I said with Duke, the amount of money does not matter because the utility of that money, Duke has no use for it. Yeah. Darian Mensah, on the other hand, he's the wild card in terms of who won or who lost here, because depending on what the buyout was and what that looked like and how that impacted his salary at Miami, right? So let's say he was supposed to get $6 million, but Duke said, we're not letting you out for a dime under 3.5, right? We paid you out for, you did a year's worth of work. It was 2 years over 8. We extrapolate that to be 4 per year. We'll pay you out. Your buyout will be 3.5, and he pays them out, that 3.5, but that 3.5 Miami says is going to come out of your 6. What just happened, Donno? He just took a $1.5 million pay cut. Now, if you want to talk about utility in one's life, $10 million useless for Duke, $5 million useless for Duke, $3 million useless for Duke. In Darian Mensah's personal life, each and every one of those amounts is very useful. It's very, very useful. So depending on what the numbers are, which we'll probably never get to see, because again, this is Duke going at it with a private entity, and it's kind of it gets a little helter-skelter when you try to FOIA and there's not two public entities involved there. But it's what I will say is, depending on the amount, if he got out and he's still making, close to what he was going to make at Duke or something along those lines, then sure, he ended up a winner. But if he's taking a significant pay cut based on the fact that this payout comes out of what was supposed to be his Miami check, don't get me wrong. Yes, you're still going to, you look at the utility of it, and the utility of going to Miami. You have the opportunity to play for a national championship. You have the opportunity to vault your stock up way through the roof. You have the opportunity to do lots of great things at Miami that, objectively speaking, that ceiling just was not there for Duke. But you're also in the space where in college football now, I mean, guys can go number one from pretty much anywhere if things break the right way. We're watching Fernando Mendoza potentially be a number one pick after being a guy coming into the season. People say, maybe he's a second-day guy, maybe a third. So ultimately, if Darian had to pay out so much that it drastically affected next year's salary, he's a loser. But if it's like close, and by close, I mean like he's still, maybe a 25% or less cut plus the opportunity and all the things that playing for Miami brings, I'd say you end up a winner. 50%, that 30 to 50% or more territory, brother, I'm sorry, a bird in the hand is always better than two in the bush. Okay? Yeah. And you betting on that bird in the bush, I pray that this young man is healthy. I pray that everything goes well for him. All it takes is one play, one tweak, one snap, one pop. All of a sudden, regardless of how well you were playing, that value looks very differently. And if you took a step back to take a step forward, but you get hurt in the process of that step back, you're objectively a loser.
Yeah, that's true. He is the wild card there. Speaking of wild cards, we're going to have, I think, more weeknight games than ever in the ACC. Is it Bush League or is it smart? I don't know, man. Part of me thinks maybe it's a little smart. You want to keep it locked right here. We're not done yet on this brand new episode of Locked On ACC. Folks, tax season does not have to take over your life. This year, TurboTax is making it easier than ever to just hand things off and move on with your day. With TurboTax Full Service, you can have your taxes done for you by a trusted local expert start to finish without the stress or the guesswork. Instead of spending hours trying to figure out forms, you can meet with a local TurboTax expert in person or connect online. And they handle everything from W-2s to self-employed forms and work to get you every deduction. You can upload your documents, go about your day, and get updates right in the TurboTax app. For a limited time, you can have all your taxes done by a local TurboTax expert for just $150 all in. If a TurboTax expert, easy for me to say, didn't file for you last year, just file by February 28th. Take taxes off your plate and get back to your life. Visit turbotax.com/local to book your appointment today. Thank you for making Locked On ACC your first listen. For your next listen, check out our other shows. Kenton Gibbs does an awesome job with Grayson Boone on Locked On Wolfpack. I host Locked On Canes. All right, so Kenton, I was just a little while ago, I was on the phone with our good friend Smitty, Brian Smith from Locked On Seminoles, and he was like, man, you won't believe the ACC gave Florida State 3 Friday night games this upcoming season. Like, clearly they're punishing Florida State for being 5-7 and 2-10 the year prior. And then I told him, hey, Brian, Miami's also got 3 Friday night games and a Thursday night game. And I'll look up the stats in a second, how many Friday night games there are. We know this is something the ACC's been dabbling in for the last couple of years, but okay, so part of me, Kenton, feels like the Friday night thing's a little Bush League, and I hate Friday night home games for Miami because Friday night is high school football night and it limits the visitors you can bring in for recruiting. So that part of it sucks. A lot of people who come down for a long weekend don't want to do it for a Friday. But I understand why the ACC is doing this, Kenton, because, if you can put some, big-time programs like Miami, Florida State, Clemson, et cetera, on a Friday night, you've essentially got the night to yourself when it comes to TV viewing.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is this was something that I talked about as what the ACC needs to do to bridge the gap. They needed to monopolize every other night of the week and say, you know what?
Yeah.
Saturdays are going to belong to the Big Ten and the SEC, but who's taking up Wednesdays? You know, I think we could beat out Maction on the Tuesday. I think, what you think? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So ultimately, I don't like the fact that it's pretty much all Friday. Like I obviously, for the sake of guys, you know, playing their games and still getting out to whatever places to visit and all that, I would have loved to see there be more days during the week where players could, you know, still go visit and still play their high school games and all that. But I think that this is the first iteration of it, and they're kind of seeing what comes of that. But again, you know, Florida State getting that many Friday night and primetime games and all that, it's a train wreck you can't help but look at. It's a train wreck that you just can't. I remember I was in a place called Salt and Lime watching Florida State Virginia last year, and I just couldn't look away. I knew
that
how
was
that
a
game
wild
was going
game. Oh my gosh!
And the thing is, Donno, did I not say before that game, this has every element of a trap game? Florida State is in trouble. I knew what was going to happen, and I still couldn't look away. I still was like, this is good. This is pure cinema, ladies and gentlemen. So ultimately, I would say, you know, it makes sense that the bigger brands with the bigger followings and those who are more successful are getting a ton of Thursday and Friday night games.
Yeah, according to an ESPN article, there will be at least 19 ACC games played on Friday nights this year. It seems like they should know exactly how many by now. That might be a couple days out of date search result, but at least 19 means the conference will average more than one game per Friday night, Kenton. So sometimes there's double headers. We saw that. You'll do like a 7:30 game or 7 o'clock game on the East Coast, and then Cal or Stanford will host the 10:30 game later on Friday night. So we're going to have at least 19 Friday night games this year with a few Thursdays sprinkled in as well.
Yeah, I think that's because I believe, I could be wrong here, I believe the ACC is trying to flex thing where it's like depending on how important the game is, you get moved into this slot or that slot or this day or that day, which I don't really like because it puts too much uncertainty into these, you know, teams and coaches' schedules. But I digress. I mean, it is what it is. It's kind of the nature of the beast. And I'm not going to shake my fist at the clouds saying, stop raining, stop producing snow and ice right now, weather, you know, so I'm not going to do it here.
I just say stop trying to sabotage these teams' recruiting by when you got a home game. It's like we can't get anybody to visit because they're all playing their high school games tonight. I don't like that. That's the part of it that I don't like. It's why at least Thursday night you can swing that if the players play high school ball on Friday. But the Friday night thing, man, it hurts me a little bit. Well, we appreciate everybody making Locked On ACC your first listen. Make sure to smash the like button, subscribe. Make sure to check out the Everydayer Club, which we're offering great stuff. Locked On ACC, Locked On Wolfpack, Locked On Canes, all the other awesome shows. And we'll talk to you again next time on another episode of Locked On ACC. We are part of the #1 Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.